Hello, I'm Liz Lumley of Finextra, and we're here at Notch's Payments Innovation Alliance in Barcelona. And today I'm speaking to Casey Wilcox of Earthport, and we're going to talk about exciting payments activities. So which region should we be looking at?
It's an interesting and a tough question, as I think there's so many things going on around the world globally with respect to payments. And I think when you look in the 2008 recession and the global impact that it had, it really caused more of a globalization and a global view around things. And I think payments really became the forefront of activity and where to look on how to normalize things. And cross-border activity became more of a norm for people. Businesses looked outside of their normal geographies to continue to acquire clients, to maintain supplies and goods for their organizations. So cross-border activity became key. So I think what you really need to be watching is places like Australia, where there's a new real-time payments initiative underway.
The global march of real-time payments.
And it's sometimes an advantage to not be the first mover. And I think they've looked at some of the lessons learned, and I think that that's a really key geography to look at and to see what they do. And of course, I think it'll be interesting to see what the US does, but I think it'll move much slower than where Australia is today.
I hate to use the word channel, but is mobile still considered the priority channel in the payment space?
Interesting that you say that. I view the channel as long as it's digital, it's relevant. So when you look at it from that perspective, of course, mobile is a very key component of digitalization, and mobile technology is driving innovation, especially in some of the more underdeveloped and underbanked or unbanked markets. So when you look in Africa, you look in some of the Asia Pacific countries, you're seeing a lot of fintech innovation around payments, and a lot of it's digitally driven around the mobile technology. So I do think mobile is absolutely relevant, but when you look at Europe and you look at America or the more developed economic areas, I think mobile is there, but I think it's about making channels digitally enabled for the consumer and the corporate alike.
So you mentioned earlier, regions like Australia learning the lessons from real-time payments in more established areas, like the UK. But since you mentioned the burgeoning payment space in other regions like Asia Pacific, I mean, what can regions like the US and the UK learn from these new entrants in the market in other regions?
I think it's interesting because when you look at where there have been a move to a faster payment schema, and I don't use the term faster payments to tie it to the UK, I just mean a way in which payments can move and settle quicker. Most places where it's happened, it's been legislated. And I don't think you'll see a legislative agenda drive the change for payments in the United States. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the US with the Fed working on their steering committee and getting that in place. So to me, that's going to be a real player, or a real telltale play in the US to see how faster payments or real-time payments evolves, because it's going to do so more out of an industry narrative versus a legislative narrative. Because I just don't think you're going to see a legislative mandate come out of the US for faster payments. So in my view, the US has the ability to, one, learn from the lessons from the European area and from other geographies that have moved to a faster payment schema, and really look at how industry and fintech can help innovate both domestically and globally and how they move money quicker.
Yeah, I know it's a strange debate over real-time payments. I've heard people argue about whether a few seconds is still a real-time payment, so it's kind of interesting.
Well, real-time, that's the whole thing to me. Real-time for a business is probably in most instances in a B2B situation, if it's same day is great. If I can move money wake up in the morning and do a business transaction from New York City to London and have it arrive same day to my beneficiary on the other side, to me that's great. That's a real-time movement of funds. If you and I are exchanging money, as consumers or P2P, we may think that has to be seconds, and the availability of those funds to you has to be there. It gets more complex in the B2B space simply because there's typically a lot more data that's riding with the transaction. So you look at it as two sets of problems: the problem of sending the data and the problem of getting the funds. And sometimes they're looked at a little bit separately.